Beneath the Antarctic Ocean, in water so cold it should kill almost everything, something the size of a school bus is hunting in total darkness. The colossal squid. It has eyes bigger than a basketball, hooks instead of fingers, and blue blood that works better the colder it gets. We are going to go deeper than any camera has gone before, through frozen currents, whale stomachs, and Viking nightmares. If you enjoy this ride, subscribe and leave a like. Now hold on. Picture the biggest thing you have ever seen in the ocean. A whale, a great white shark, a giant sea turtle. Now throw all of that out. The colossal squid makes every one of those animals look like a goldfish in a bowl. This creature lives exclusively in the Southern Ocean, the freezing ring of water that wraps around Antarctica. And something about that place, something about those waters specifically, makes it grow into a size that has no equal among any soft-bodied animal on the planet. The largest confirmed specimen ever recovered stretched over 30 feet long and weighed over 1,100 pounds. That is heavier than a full-grown polar bear and longer than a pickup truck with a trailer hitched to it. But here is the part that should stop you cold. That specimen was likely a juvenile. Scientists who study cephalopods, which is the family that includes squid and octopus, believe the colossal squid can grow significantly larger. The evidence is indirect but overwhelming. Sperm whales, which hunt these animals in the deepest parts of the Southern Ocean, surface with sucker scars on their skin. Those scars are round, jagged-edged marks left by the squid's arm hooks. When researchers measure the biggest scars found on whale skin, they calculate that the squid responsible had arms far wider than any specimen ever pulled from the water. By those measurements, some individuals alive in the deep right now could exceed 45 feet in length, longer than a city bus, heavier than a mid-sized truck. So why here? Why does this animal reach these sizes only in Antarctic waters and nowhere else? The answer starts with cold. The Southern Ocean sits between 28 and 34 degrees Fahrenheit for most of the year. That is right at the edge of freezing. Most animals cannot function in temperatures that low. Their enzymes slow down, their muscles stop contracting properly. Their whole biology begins to shut off like a phone left outside in winter. The colossal squid is built for exactly that. Its entire body chemistry is tuned to work best in near-freezing water. While other animals are fighting to survive the cold, this squid is thriving in it. The cold does not hurt it. The cold is its fuel, and that cold is directly connected to its size. Antarctic water holds far more dissolved oxygen than warm tropical water does. Cold liquid holds gas better, the same reason a cold soda holds its fizz longer than a warm one. That oxygen floods the squid's tissues. It feeds cellular growth at a rate that simply cannot happen in warmer, oxygen-poorer water. The result, over thousands of generations of evolution, is an animal that keeps growing far past the point where any of its warm water relatives stop. A team of marine scientists studying Southern Ocean ecology described the colossal squid as the dominant, large predator in its zone. That means in a body of water that covers over 8 million square miles. This animal sits at the top. It hunts, it ambushes, it shreds, and almost nothing alive down there can stop it. But the size alone is only the beginning of what makes this creature different from anything else on Earth. Because it is not just big, the tools it uses to hunt, the weapons built into every inch of its body, belong to something designed for a very different kind of violence. The first weapon is coming up, and it is harder than most metals. Stand at the edge of Antarctica and look out at the water. It does not look like an ocean. It looks like the edge of the world. The Southern Ocean is the most violent, most isolated, and most extreme body of water on the planet. Waves regularly reach 60 feet high. Storms circle the continent for weeks without stopping. The water temperature hovers just above the point where salt water turns to ice. Most marine animals that accidentally drift into this zone die within hours. Their bodies freeze from the inside out, their cells rupturing as ice crystals form where liquid should be. The colossal squid was born here, and it never leaves. To understand why that is extraordinary, You need to understand what cold water actually does to living tissue. Every chemical reaction inside a living body, every heartbeat, every muscle twitch, every breath depends on proteins called enzymes. Enzymes are shaped like tiny machines, and their shape determines how fast they work. When temperature drops, enzymes slow down. Drop the temperature far enough and they stop working entirely. That is why cold-blooded animals like reptiles become sluggish in winter. Their enzyme machinery is grinding to a halt. The colossal squid carries a completely different set of enzymes. Scientists who analyzed tissue samples from recovered specimens found that its proteins are structurally distinct from those of squid living in warmer water. Its enzymes are flexible at the molecular level. They stay active and fast even when the surrounding temperature is just above freezing. While a tropical squid's body chemistry would essentially shut down in Antarctic water, the colossal squid's internal machinery runs at full speed. This is not a small adaptation. This is a total biological redesign. And the Southern Ocean rewards that redesign with something no warm water can offer: an unbelievable amount of food. The freezing water around Antarctica is extraordinarily rich in nutrients. Cold water pulls minerals up from the deep sea floor in massive upwelling currents. Those minerals feed microscopic plants called phytoplankton. The phytoplankton feed krill, small shrimp-like creatures that form clouds so dense in Antarctic waters they actually turn the ocean pink when seen from above. Those krill feed fish. Those fish feed the colossal squid. The food chain here is compressed and explosive. More nutrients mean more prey. More prey means a predator can afford to grow enormous without running out of food. The colossal squid sits at the end of this chain and simply keeps eating. There is another element that makes the Southern Ocean uniquely perfect for this animal. The circular current that flows around Antarctica, moving constantly from west to east, acts like a wall. It isolates the entire region from the rest of the world's oceans. Warm water cannot easily push in. The cold stays trapped. And inside that cold trap, the colossal squid has been evolving in near total isolation for millions of years, growing more extreme with every generation. It has had millions of years with almost no competition and no outside interference. The result is an animal so perfectly matched to its environment that removing it from those waters even slightly causes rapid deterioration. Specimens brought to the surface, even accidentally by fishing nets, begin dying almost immediately. The cold is not just where it lives. The cold is what it is. And what lives inside that cold body would shock you even more than the body itself. Because the squid's eyes, the tools it uses to navigate a world of absolute darkness, are something biology should not have been able to build. Close your eyes for a second. Now imagine you are 1 mile underwater. No sunlight reaches you, no glow from the surface. The darkness is total, like being inside a sealed room with no windows and no electricity. The pressure around you is crushing, and somewhere in that black water, something is hunting you. That something can see you perfectly. The colossal squid has the largest eyes of any animal on Earth. Each eye measures about 11 inches across. That is roughly the size of a dinner plate. For comparison, a human eye measures about 1 inch. A colossal squid's eye is 11 times wider. The lens inside each eye alone is about the size of an orange. The sheer scale of those eyes puzzled scientists for years. Why build such enormous eyes? An eye that large takes enormous energy to grow and maintain. Evolution does not waste energy. Every feature that survives across millions of generations of a species exists because it solves a problem. So what problem required an eye that big? The answer came from a team of researchers who built a mathematical model of light behavior in deep ocean water. At extreme depths, essentially no sunlight exists. But one source of light does penetrate even into the deepest zones: bioluminescence. Many deep-sea creatures produce their own light, flashing it in brief bursts to communicate, to attract prey, or to startle predators. These flashes are faint. They are the visual equivalent of a single candle glimpsed from the length of a football field. A small eye cannot detect that. The physics simply do not allow it. A small eye does not gather enough light to register a faint bioluminescent flash before it fades. But a massive eye, one with a lens the size of an orange and a light-gathering surface 11 inches wide, can catch those faint flashes at distances that would be completely invisible to any other predator. Scientists calculated that the colossal squid's eye can detect bioluminescent light sources from over 400 feet away in total darkness. That is longer than a football field. The squid effectively sees its prey long before its prey has any idea something is there. And there is a specific reason those eyes evolved to detect bioluminescence so precisely. The colossal squid's primary predator is the sperm whale. Sperm whales are enormous, powerful, and fast. But when a sperm whale moves through deep water, it disturbs the bioluminescent plankton and organisms around it. That disturbance creates a faint glow, a moving outline of light in the darkness. The colossal squid's oversized eyes can detect that glowing outline long before the whale arrives, giving the squid time to go still or flee. The eye is simultaneously a hunting tool and a survival radar, but seeing the prey is only step one. Once the squid locks onto a target, the next phase begins, and the weapons it deploys in that next phase are built from a material harder than most things in nature. You are about to find out what a beak made for bone can do. Imagine picking up the beak of a parrot, holding it in your hand, and then scaling it up to the size of a football. Keep the same hooked, curved shape. Keep the razor edge. Make it hard enough to score the surface of steel. Now attach it to the front of a 30-foot animal that can generate pulling force equivalent to several grown adults. That is the colossal squid's beak. Every squid species has a beak. It sits at the center of the ring of arms, buried in soft muscle, and it is the only truly rigid structure in the squid's entire body. For the colossal squid, that beak is the largest of any squid species ever measured. The upper part curves down like a hook. The lower part locks into it and snaps upward with enormous force. Together, they create a cutting and crushing mechanism that can sever the spine of a large fish in a single strike. The material itself is extraordinary. The beak is made of a substance similar to chitin, which is the same base material in insect shells and crab claws. But the colossal squid's beak is built in layers of varying density. The outermost tip is extremely hard and rigid, harder than most natural materials. Moving back toward where the beak connects to the soft body, the material gradually softens. Scientists who studied this structure called it one of the most elegant engineering solutions in the animal kingdom. A completely rigid beak sitting inside soft flesh would act like a knife blade stuck into a pillow. Every bite would tear the squid's own body apart. The graduated hardness solves that problem. The transition from hard to soft happens so gradually that stress is distributed across the whole structure instead of concentrating at one point. Engineers studying this design published papers on how it could inform the development of next-generation materials. The squid solved an engineering problem that humans are still working on. In practical terms, what the beak allows is ruthless. When the colossal squid captures prey, it does not hold and squeeze the way an octopus might. It pulls the target toward the beak using its arms and tentacles, then uses the beak to bite through in rapid, precise strikes. Fish, smaller squid, crustaceans, and possibly sections of larger prey all get processed this way. Stomach contents from recovered colossal squid specimens have contained fish bones, squid beaks from other species, and crustacean shell fragments, all of them cleanly severed rather than crushed. The beak is so durable it outlasts everything else. When a sperm whale eats a colossal squid, it digests the soft tissue entirely, but the beak survives the whale's stomach acid. Researchers have pulled colossal squid beaks from sperm whale stomachs in significant numbers, and counting those beaks is actually how scientists first estimated how often whales hunt these squid. One whale, examined in detail, carried over 18,000 squid beaks in its stomach. Each of those beaks came from a hunt in total darkness, at crushing depth, in freezing water. And the beak is only one weapon on this animal. The arms surrounding it are covered in something that makes the beak look almost gentle by comparison. Run your finger across a piece of Velcro. Feel those tiny hooks catching on fabric, locking in, refusing to let go. Now imagine those hooks are sharp. Imagine they rotate. Imagine there are hundreds of them across 10 arms built from pure muscle. Imagine they are attached to an animal that can pull with the force of a small engine. That is what it feels like to be grabbed by a colossal squid. Most squid species use suckers on their arms and tentacles. Those suckers create a vacuum seal against the prey's skin, holding on the same way a suction cup sticks to glass. They work well enough, but the colossal squid took a completely different evolutionary path. Instead of suckers, its arms and tentacles carry sharp, swiveling hooks. Each hook is made of the same hard chitin material as the beak, curved inward like a claw, and mounted on a rotating base that allows it to spin as it digs in. When the colossal squid grabs prey, those hooks do not just hold, they rotate as the arms tighten, driving the points deeper into tissue with every movement. The prey's own struggle against the grip makes the hooks turn further inward. Pulling away makes it worse. Staying still makes it worse. The design is a trap that tightens in response to resistance. Scientists examining recovered colossal squid found that the two longest limbs, called tentacles, are separate from the 8 arms and carry hooks specifically concentrated at the tips. These tentacles shoot out at prey with remarkable speed, striking from a distance the prey cannot predict, and the hooks at the tip lock on contact. Then the 8 arms close in around the catch, bringing it toward the beak. The reach of those tentacles matters enormously. For a 30-foot squid, the tentacles can extend roughly 15 feet beyond the body. The squid's effective strike range, from the tip of one tentacle to the other, can span distances greater than the length of an average classroom. Prey that thinks it is safely distant from the squid's body is already inside the strike zone. And the hooks leave evidence. When sperm whales surface after deep dives, their skin often carries circular scars arranged in the distinctive pattern of colossal squid arm hooks. These scars are not small. They are visible from a boat. Some measure over 2 inches across. Each scar represents a moment when a colossal squid tried to hold onto a sperm whale or fought back against one. The whale's skin carries a record of every battle it survived. The hooks also explain something that confused researchers for years: why colossal squid pulled up in fishing nets sometimes arrive with their own arms partially destroyed. The hooks, designed to grip and rotate inward, occasionally turn against the squid itself when the animal is trapped and thrashing. The same weapon that makes it lethal to everything else becomes a hazard to itself under extreme stress. A biological design so aggressive it can injure its own owner. The question that sits over all of this is how a soft animal, no bones, no armor, no shell, can sustain battles against creatures far larger than itself without being destroyed in the process. The answer to that question involves sperm, whales, darkness, and wounds that neither animal fully recovers from. A sperm whale is one of the most powerful animals that has ever lived. It can reach 60 feet long and weigh over 40 tons. Its skull is so dense it can be used as a battering ram. It dives deeper than almost any other mammal alive. It generates clicking sounds loud enough to stun prey. By every measure, a sperm whale is an apex predator, a top-level hunter with almost no natural threats. And yet, sperm whales surface covered in scars. Those scars appear across the head, the flanks, and the lower jaw of sperm whales all over the world. But they are most common on whales that feed in Antarctic waters. The scars are circular, edged with jagged puncture marks, and arranged in arm-width clusters. Every scientist who has studied them reaches the same conclusion. They came from colossal squid hooks. For a long time, researchers assumed these scars meant the squid was fighting back defensively, lashing out when the whale tried to eat it. That interpretation made sense. A prey animal defending itself before being killed. Standard predator-prey behavior. But deeper analysis of the wounds changed that picture significantly. Some of the scars on sperm whales are located on parts of the body that a purely defensive squid should never have reached. The top of the head, the back near the dorsal area, positions that suggest the squid was actively maneuvering around the whale, wrapping arms across its body, gripping from multiple angles simultaneously. Defensive prey does not do that. Active fighters do. Scientists studying sperm whale scar patterns proposed that at least some interactions between large colossal squid and sperm whales are genuine conflicts. Encounters where the squid is large enough and aggressive enough that it does real damage to the whale before being subdued or escaping. Some researchers go further, suggesting that very large colossal squid may occasionally drive off smaller or younger sperm whales entirely. The whale's stomach contents tell one side of the story. Those thousands of colossal squid beaks found in whale stomachs confirm that whales eat a staggering number of squid across their lifetimes. But the scars on the whale's exterior tell another side. Every beak in that stomach represents a battle, and every scar on the whale's skin represents one the squid nearly won. Sperm whales are also known to surface with fresh wounds, gaping hook marks still bleeding, after deep feeding dives in southern ocean waters. The depth at which these encounters happen adds another layer of extremity. Both animals are fighting at 1 mile below the surface, in total darkness, at crushing pressure, in near freezing water. The violence happening down there is entirely outside human observation. Scientists piece it together from scars and stomach contents, like detectives reading the aftermath of something they never saw. What we know with certainty is this: the colossal squid is the only prey animal in the Southern Ocean that regularly marks its predator, the only one that fights back hard enough to leave permanent evidence on the animal trying to eat it. And the size advantage the squid carries in these battles comes from a force that shaped it over millions of years, a force built into the physics of cold water itself. In the 1900s, a German biologist named Carl Bergman noticed something strange about warm-blooded animals. Animals of the same species tended to grow larger in colder climates than in warmer ones. Bears in northern Canada were bigger than bears in Mexico. Wolves near the Arctic were heavier than wolves in the American Southwest. He proposed that larger bodies lose heat more slowly because they have less surface area relative to their volume. Cold climates rewarded bigger bodies because bigger bodies stayed warm longer. Bergman's rule works well for warm-blooded animals. But the ocean took the same basic principle and applied it to cold-blooded creatures in a completely different way, producing something far more extreme. Scientists call it polar gigantism, and the colossal squid is its most dramatic example. The mechanism works like this. Cold water holds dissolved oxygen at much higher concentrations than warm water does. Think of oxygen the way you think of sugar, dissolving in a drink. A cold drink can hold more dissolved sugar before it becomes saturated. A warm drink reaches that limit faster and holds less. In the same way, cold Antarctic water is essentially supersaturated with oxygen compared to the surface water near the equator. That oxygen feeds every cell in every organism living in the water. For most creatures, the rate at which their cells can grow is limited by how much oxygen their blood can deliver. In Antarctic water, the oxygen supply is so abundant that this limitation essentially disappears. Cells can keep dividing, keep building, keep growing, far past the point where growth would stall in warmer, oxygen-poorer water. The cold also slows down the rate at which cells break down and die. In warmer environments, metabolic processes run faster, which means wear and tear on cells accumulates more quickly. Cold temperatures slow all of that down, extending cell life and allowing structures to build up over longer periods. The animal grows more slowly, but it grows for longer, and the tissues it builds last longer before degrading. For the colossal squid, this combination produces a body that keeps adding mass well into adulthood. A colossal squid in Antarctic water does not hit a growth ceiling the way a giant squid in temperate water does. It just keeps building, Polar gigantism shows up across dozens of species in Antarctic and Arctic waters. Sea spiders in the Southern Ocean grow to the size of dinner plates when their tropical relatives are the size of a thumbnail. Antarctic isopods, small crustaceans, reach sizes many times larger than their relatives in warmer seas. Deep-sea worms, sea urchins, and jellies all follow the same pattern near the poles. The colossal squid simply represents the most extreme version of a rule that runs through the entire polar ecosystem. And the cold does something else to this animal. Beyond just making it large, it rewrites the chemistry of its blood in a way that makes it unlike almost any other creature on the planet. Dip a glass into the ocean near Florida and dip another glass into the Southern Ocean near Antarctica. The water in both glasses looks identical, but on a molecular level, they are profoundly different. The Antarctic water carries roughly twice the dissolved oxygen of the Florida water. That gap does not sound enormous until you consider what oxygen does inside a living body. Oxygen is not just something animals breathe. It is the raw fuel that drives every single cellular process: growth, repair, immune function, muscle contraction, nerve signals. All of them depend on oxygen reaching the cells that need it. Without a steady oxygen supply, cells slow down, begin to malfunction, and eventually die. In warm ocean water, the dissolved oxygen concentration places a hard ceiling on biological activity. An animal's cells can only grow and divide as fast as oxygen arrives to power that process. Warm water delivers less oxygen, so the ceiling is lower. Animals in tropical and temperate oceans grow within that ceiling and stop. Antarctic water removes the ceiling almost entirely. The level of dissolved oxygen in the Southern Ocean is high enough that the limiting factor for cell growth shifts away from oxygen supply. Cells in a colossal squid living in Antarctic water are receiving far more oxygen than they strictly need just to survive. That surplus powers additional growth, additional tissue construction, additional complexity. The cells are running above their minimum requirements and using the excess to build. Scientists studying polar marine life documented this effect across dozens of species. A team examining Antarctic sea spiders discovered that their cells were dividing at rates not seen in any comparable warm water species. The researchers concluded that oxygen availability was the primary driver. More oxygen equaled more division, equaled bigger animals. For the colossal squid, this effect compounds over its entire lifespan. The squid likely lives between 5 and 9 years. Every year it spends in that oxygen-rich water, its tissues continue building at rates impossible elsewhere. A 5-year-old colossal squid raised in Antarctic water and a 5-year-old giant squid raised in temperate water are almost incomparable in size. The Antarctic animal will be dramatically larger purely because of oxygen, but there is a catch. That growth comes with a cost in cold water biology. Growing large in cold water requires slower metabolic processes overall. The colossal squid burns energy far more slowly than similarly sized warm water animals. It cannot sustain the kind of rapid extended bursts of speed that, say, a yellowfin tuna can produce. Its muscles are built for short, explosive movements rather than endurance, and that limitation shapes its entire hunting strategy. The colossal squid cannot run down prey over long distances. Instead, it waits, it ambushes, it uses stillness as a weapon. The oxygen-driven body is built for one thing: a single, overwhelming strike from perfect stillness. And making that strike possible requires something even more unusual than giant cells. It requires blood that runs on a completely different metal than yours does. Cut your finger, and the blood that comes out is red. That red color comes from hemoglobin, a protein in your red blood cells that carries oxygen. Hemoglobin is built around iron atoms. Those iron atoms bind to oxygen molecules and carry them through your bloodstream to wherever your body needs them. The iron is what makes the blood red. Cut a colossal squid, and the blood that comes out is blue. The colossal squid's blood carries oxygen using a completely different protein called hemocyanin. Hemocyanin uses copper atoms instead of iron. Copper, when it binds to oxygen, turns the blood a vivid blue color. Instead of flowing inside dedicated blood cells the way hemoglobin does, hemocyanin dissolves directly into the liquid part of the blood, turning the entire fluid blue from end to end. For most animals, hemocyanin would be a terrible choice. Hemoglobin is far more efficient at carrying oxygen under normal conditions. It can bind more oxygen molecules per unit of blood volume and deliver them faster. In a warm-blooded animal running a high metabolism, hemoglobin's superior efficiency is essential. But the colossal squid does not live under normal conditions. Hemocyanin has one critical advantage that hemoglobin lacks. It becomes more efficient at delivering oxygen as temperature drops. In near-freezing water, hemocyanin outperforms hemoglobin at oxygen delivery. The same cold that would be devastating to a system built around hemoglobin becomes an enhancer for a system built around hemocyanin. As the water gets colder, the colossal squid's blood actually gets better at doing its job. This is the opposite of what happens in most animals. Cold slows down chemistry. Cold makes most biological systems less effective. But hemocyanin in cold, high oxygen, Antarctic water operates at peak performance. The squid's blood is literally optimized for an environment that would cause most other animals' circulatory systems to fail. Scientists examining the hemocyanin structure in colossal squid blood found that the protein's shape is slightly different from hemocyanin found in warmer water squid species. The Antarctic version of the protein has molecular modifications that improve its oxygen binding capacity at low temperatures specifically. Evolution did not just give this animal hemocyanin, it tuned the hemocyanin for the exact temperature range of the Southern Ocean. There is a practical consequence to all of this. A colossal squid pulled from Antarctic water and placed in warmer water begins to suffocate from the inside. The water temperature change disrupts the hemocyanin's efficiency. The blood stops delivering enough oxygen even though the water around the animal may contain adequate dissolved oxygen. The squid's circulatory system, perfected for cold, cannot adapt fast enough to survive warmth. This is why every specimen brought to the surface alive dies quickly. The temperature shift is fatal. The blood that keeps this animal thriving in the most extreme ocean environment on Earth is the same blood that makes it impossible to study alive. And speaking of what the squid uses to navigate that darkness, there is something even stranger waiting. Because to hunt in total blackness, the squid does not just see, it creates its own light, 1 mile underwater. No surface light reaches this depth. None. The pressure is over 150 times what you feel standing on dry land. The temperature is barely above freezing. Your eyes would see absolutely nothing in any direction. And yet something is glowing. Bioluminescence, the ability for living things to produce their own light, is extraordinarily common in the deep ocean. Scientists estimate that over 70% of deep-sea creatures produce some form of light. The ocean at depth is not entirely dark. It is filled with brief, cold flashes. Tiny sparks from plankton, slow pulses from jellyfish, quick bursts from fish. A constant, faint language of light that most surface animals never see. The colossal squid participates in this language in a way that is both sophisticated and predatory. Specialized light-producing cells called photophores are distributed across the colossal squid's body and at specific points on its arms and tentacles. These cells do not produce constant light. They fire in controlled bursts, flashes that can be triggered by the squid's nervous system. The pattern and timing of these flashes appear to serve multiple purposes. The first is camouflage from below. When something looks upward in the deep ocean, it sees the faintest possible glow from whatever minimal light trickles down from the surface. An opaque body silhouetted against that glow is visible. Many deep-sea creatures use bioluminescence along their undersides to match the faint downwelling light, erasing their silhouette. This is called counterillumination. Scientists studying bioluminescent patterns in colossal squid tissue believe the squid uses photophores the same way, lighting its underside to disappear against the background glow. The second purpose is offense. When the squid detects prey using its enormous eyes, it can use controlled bioluminescent flashes to disrupt the prey's ability to navigate in the darkness. A sudden, intense flash in an otherwise completely dark environment creates temporary blindness in any creature nearby. The colossal squid can essentially strobe light its target at close range before striking, giving the prey less than a second to react to something it now cannot see clearly. Researchers who analyzed photophore placement on colossal squid specimens noted that the densest clusters appear near the tips of the tentacles, the parts that make first contact with prey. A flash from the very tips of the strike zone, timed just before the hooks engage, would maximize the disorienting effect. Light as a weapon, darkness as cover, the squid turns both against anything it hunts. But all of this physical machinery, the eyes, the beak, the hooks, the bioluminescence, is controlled by something deeply strange. A brain that sits in the worst possible location a brain could occupy in a living body. And what happens when it tries to swallow something too large will make you question how this animal survived evolution at all. Your brain is inside your skull, surrounded by bone on all sides. That bone exists for one reason: to protect the most important organ in your body from physical damage. Every animal with a complex nervous system places its brain somewhere protected. Fish have skulls, birds have skulls. Even insects protect their nerve clusters inside a hard exoskeleton. The colossal squid keeps its brain wrapped around its throat. The squid has a donut-shaped brain, a ring of neural tissue that completely encircles the esophagus, which is the tube that carries food from the mouth to the stomach. Every piece of food the squid swallows must pass through the center of its own brain. This is an extraordinary vulnerability. A piece of prey that is too wide, a fish with a large skull, a crustacean with a rigid shell, anything that does not fit smoothly through the center of that neural ring can physically compress the brain tissue as it passes through. Scientists who dissected colossal squid specimens found scarring and compression damage in the brain tissue of individuals that had clearly been eating large prey. The squid can injure its own brain by eating. Evolution did not miss this problem. The squid adapted around it in two ways. First, the beak. Before swallowing anything, the squid uses its beak to break prey into smaller pieces, reducing the diameter of each chunk before it travels inward. The beak is the pre-processing tool that makes the throat-brain arrangement survivable. Second, the esophagus itself has a flexible, expandable structure that allows some degree of widening for slightly oversized pieces. But the fundamental design remains a risk, and researchers studying squid neuroscience believe it places a hard limit on what the colossal squid can safely eat in one piece. Large prey must be dismembered before consumption. Items too large to be broken down by the beak cannot be swallowed without damage. This bizarre anatomy is not unique to the colossal squid. All cephalopods share the donut brain structure. Octopus, nautilus, common squid. Every member of the group has a brain encircling the esophagus. Scientists believe this design is an evolutionary relic from a much earlier ancestor, a body plan that made sense for smaller, simpler creatures before cephalopods grew into the complex, large-brained animals they became today. For the colossal squid specifically, this creates a permanent tension between its hunger and its safety. The biggest, most calorie-dense prey in its environment are also the prey most likely to damage its brain during consumption. The animal is constantly navigating a line between eating enough to survive and eating carefully enough to stay neurologically intact. The brain it protects so imperfectly is itself remarkable. It controls 10 independent limbs simultaneously, processes bioluminescent visual data in near-zero light, and manages the complex physics of moving a massive body through deep water. Speaking of moving through water, the colossal squid does something with its body density that other squid cannot. something that makes it look, from a distance, like it is floating without effort or intention. Watch a submarine. To dive, it fills ballast tanks with seawater, increasing its overall density until it sinks. To surface, it pushes that water out with compressed air, decreasing density until it rises. The whole system is engineered buoyancy control, a way to move vertically through water without burning fuel on propulsion. The colossal squid does the same thing, inside its own body. Using chemistry, the squid's mantle, the large tube-shaped main body section, contains a chamber called a coalomic cavity. This cavity holds a special fluid, rich in a chemical called ammonium chloride. That chemical is lighter than seawater. By adjusting how much of this fluid the cavity holds, and by shifting how it is distributed through the body, the squid can fine-tune its overall density relative to the surrounding water. At neutral buoyancy, the squid neither sinks nor rises. It simply hangs in the water column at whatever depth it chooses, suspended without effort, requiring essentially no muscular energy to maintain position. For an animal that ambushes prey rather than chasing it, this is a critical advantage. Staying completely still in open water, invisible and motionless for extended periods, requires zero energy expenditure. The squid can wait indefinitely. When it needs to sink to deeper hunting grounds, the fluid redistribution increases overall density and the squid descends without swimming. When it needs to rise, the fluid shifts again and the squid ascends. The whole system operates without the squid needing to beat its fins or fire its jet propulsion. This buoyancy system also explains a mystery that confused early researchers. Why colossal squid pulled up from the deep arrive at the surface, looking physically relaxed, arms loosely spread, rather than in the rigid, stressed posture of an animal that fought its way upward. The squid likely adjusted its buoyancy during the ascent, riding the change in pressure passively, rather than actively resisting it. There is a cost to this system, however. Ammonium chloride is chemically incompatible with the taste receptors of most large ocean predators. To a sperm whale, tissue saturated with ammonium chloride tastes intensely unpleasant, similar to the chemical smell of strong cleaning products. Yet sperm whales eat colossal squid constantly, overriding the distaste because the caloric value of the prey is high enough to be worth it. This same ammonium chloride content makes colossal squid flesh inedible to humans. Eating a significant portion of raw colossal squid muscle would cause nausea and illness. The squid is toxic enough to be unpalatable to almost every predator except those large enough and hungry enough to tolerate it. A body that is both invisible and foul-tasting. A creature that waits in perfect stillness for prey to come within strike range, then hits with rotating hooks and a beak that can cut bone. What happens after the strike involves a weapon that researchers did not discover until they studied what the squid releases when it is in danger itself, because its ink does something that no other animal's ink does. In 2003, a fishing vessel operating near the South Sandwich Islands in the Southern Ocean made an unusual catch. A sperm whale had become entangled in their deep water line, and when it died and was brought to the surface, the crew contacted a marine research team. Scientists arrived quickly. What they found inside the whale's digestive system changed the scientific understanding of the colossal squid almost overnight. The whale's stomach held the partially digested remains of a colossal squid that, based on beak size and tissue volume, researchers estimated at a mass significantly larger than any specimen ever recovered intact. The beak alone measured over 4 inches across, the largest ever recorded at that time. Surrounding the remains was something else entirely, evidence of a struggle. The whale's stomach lining carried fresh lacerations. Parallel cuts consistent with colossal squid hook marks ran along the interior stomach wall. The stomach itself, an organ typically very thick and resistant, had been cut through in multiple places. The squid had continued fighting after being swallowed, driving its hooks into the interior of the whale's digestive system even as it was being digested alive. This discovery forced researchers to revise their model of the predator-prey relationship in southern ocean deep water. The assumption before this find was that sperm whales pursued colossal squid, caught them, and consumed them with limited resistance. The squid were considered passive prey at the point of capture. The stomach evidence told a different story. The squid was attacking from inside the predator that had swallowed it. Subsequent analysis of other sperm whales in the region found similar interior stomach damage. A team reviewing specimen data across multiple decades of whaling records found references to lacerations in sperm whale stomach linings that had been catalogued but never interpreted as squid-related. Looking at those records with fresh understanding, researchers concluded that colossal squid resistance inside the stomach was documented but unrecognized going back at least 50 years. What this suggests about colossal squid behavior is significant. An animal that fights this hard, this persistently, in conditions where most creatures would be immobilized, carries a level of aggression and physical resilience that exceeds almost anything else in the ocean at that depth. The squid keeps fighting after being bitten by the largest toothed predator on Earth. It keeps fighting in stomach acid. It keeps fighting in the dark. That aggression is hardwired. It is not panic. Scientists studying squid neuroscience believe the colossal squid's nervous system does not register the kind of overwhelm and shutdown response that stops most prey animals from resisting once caught. The squid essentially has no biological switch for surrender. Cultures that lived near the ocean understood this kind of creature long before science could document it. They gave it a name that lasted for 1,000 years. And that name is older than you think. 1,000 years ago, Viking sailors crossing the North Atlantic described an animal so large it could be mistaken for an island. Ships anchored to its back. Sailors walked across it until it submerged without warning. The creature, which they called the Kraken, could drag entire vessels under the surface with arms that wrapped the hull from all sides. Norwegian texts from the 1200s describe it in specific physical terms. Massive cylindrical body, multiple long arms, an ability to rise silently from the deep and pull things down. In ancient Greece, Homer described the monster Scylla as a six-headed creature that snatched sailors directly from ships. Greek coastal texts from the same period reference sea creatures with multiple arms emerging from deep water to take prey from the surface. The descriptions, stripped of their mythological framing, describe an animal pulling from below with multiple independently moving limbs. Polynesian cultures across the Pacific carried oral traditions of a creature called Te Wike Amuturangi, a giant octopus-like animal that lived in the deep ocean and was hunted by the legendary navigator Kupe. The story describes the animal hiding in deep, cold water, using darkness as cover and attacking suddenly from below. Across 3 entirely separate civilizations, with no documented contact with each other, the same basic creature appears. Multiple long arms, enormous body, emergence from cold deep water, ambush behavior, the ability to pull large objects down. When marine biologist Frederick Aldrich published a study in the 1960s comparing historical sea monster accounts with known giant and colossal squid biology, he found the overlap startling. The cylindrical body of the Kraken matches the mantle structure of a large squid. The multiple flexible arms match the arm and tentacle arrangement. The reported ability to disappear suddenly into deep water matches the squid's buoyancy control. The accounts of the creature being spotted from ships, appearing briefly at the surface before sinking again, align with behavior scientists now associate with injured or dying colossal squid that occasionally drift near the surface. Aldrich proposed that the Kraken legend across multiple cultures almost certainly originated from genuine encounters with very large squid. Sailors who saw a massive, partially surfaced squid in low light, or who encountered one during a storm, or who saw a dead specimen drift past, would have generated exactly the kind of reports that became the Kraken mythology. The key detail that appears across nearly every culture's version: the creature comes from deep, cold water, the same deep, cold water where the colossal squid actually lives. Humanity was describing a real animal for over 1,000 years, and the first time anyone actually saw one alive, captured on video, was far more recent than anyone expected. The footage was recorded in 2004, and what the camera showed proved the legends were underselling it. For most of modern science, the colossal squid existed only in fragments. A beak here, a tentacle there, a partially digested mass in a whale's stomach. No living specimen had ever been observed in its natural environment. No footage existed. No photographs showed one moving. Scientists spent over a century building a picture of this animal from pieces, the way you might try to understand a car by examining only individual bolts found on the road. In 2004, a Japanese research team working in the South Pacific changed that. They deployed a camera attached to a baited longline at a depth of approximately 3,000 feet south of the Bonin Islands. The target was giant squid, a species related to but smaller than the colossal squid. What they caught on camera was something they had not planned for. A squid appeared at the bait, enormous, moving differently from any squid footage the team had seen before. It circled the bait slowly, rather than striking immediately, its massive eyes scanning. Then it struck, driving a tentacle into the bait and retracting. When it pulled away, the tip of that tentacle remained caught on the hook. The squid spent over 4 hours attempting to free itself before detaching. When the line was retrieved, the team found an 18-foot tentacle, 18 feet of arm tissue, from an animal whose total length they could not determine from the footage. The body never fully came into frame. What they captured was a piece of something larger, and the piece alone was extraordinary. The footage caused immediate excitement across the global marine science community. For the first time, researchers could study movement patterns, hunting behavior, and physical proportions in a live specimen. What they saw revised several assumptions. The colossal squid in the footage was calm, methodical. It moved without urgency until the moment of the strike. Scientists had theorized that these animals were ambush hunters, but the footage made it concrete. The squid spent time assessing before committing. It circled. It watched. The enormous eyes were clearly active, tracking the bait, measuring the situation before the tentacle shot forward. The speed of the strike itself lasted only a fraction of a second in the footage. The assessment phase took minutes. The weapon fired in an instant, after a long, patient wait. Subsequent expeditions using remotely operated vehicles and deep ocean camera rigs over the following years captured additional footage in Antarctic waters, building a more complete behavioral picture. But each new piece of footage answered one question and raised several more, because this animal in motion is more complex than any fragment had suggested. And the reason the animal moves the way it does, slow and deliberate, circles before striking, has everything to do with a reproductive decision it can only make once in its entire life, because the colossal squid reproduces only one time, and what that sacrifice costs is almost incomprehensible. Every living thing makes a trade-off between surviving and reproducing. Some animals spread reproduction across decades, investing small amounts of energy at a time, the way a sea turtle lays eggs every few years for most of its 50-year life. Others go the opposite direction, pour everything into one single reproductive event, stake every calorie, every cell, every resource the body has built across its entire life into one moment of reproduction, and then die. The colossal squid takes the second path. Completely, squid as a group are semelparous, meaning they reproduce once and die. For most squid species, this is already dramatic. For the colossal squid, given the scale of the animal and the years of growth leading up to that single event, the stakes are staggering. A female colossal squid approaching reproductive maturity undergoes massive physiological changes. The ovaries expand to fill a significant portion of the body cavity. Researchers examining mature female specimens found that the reproductive organs in a ready-to-spawn female can account for nearly a fifth of total body mass. The body effectively converts itself into a reproductive vessel. Muscle tissue breaks down to fuel the reproductive organs. The digestive system slows and partially shuts down. The animal is consuming itself. The eggs produced in this single event are tiny individually, but the total number is enormous. Scientists estimate a mature female may carry several million eggs simultaneously. Those eggs, released in open water, are fertilized and drift as they develop. No parental care occurs. The female has no involvement with the eggs after release. The entire investment is in quantity and the quality of the egg itself. The eggs carry enough yolk to sustain the developing embryo through early stages without external food. The hatchlings emerge as miniature squid, fully formed but tiny, and immediately begin the years-long process of growing toward the enormous adult size their genetics promise. The male colossal squid faces a version of the same fate. After mating, males also decline rapidly. Their role is complete in a biological sense. The body begins deteriorating. They stop hunting effectively. Within weeks to months, the male dies. What this means for the population is a complete generational turnover on a relatively short cycle. Every colossal squid alive right now will be dead within a few years. The individuals replacing them are already drifting somewhere in the Southern Ocean as juveniles, growing slowly, eating constantly, preparing for the one moment that defines their entire existence. The sacrifice is total, and it produces an animal that, if it survives to adulthood, will be one of the most extreme physical forms in all of ocean biology. Scientists believe the reproductive cycle also explains why so few adult colossal squid are ever observed. The post-reproductive decline happens fast. Adults at peak size are a brief window in a lifespan measured in years. Most of what scientists find are juveniles, partial remains, or animals in the reproductive decline phase, washing toward the surface as their buoyancy control deteriorates. The adult at full power, the animal the sperm whale fights at 1 mile deep, is something we have almost never seen intact. And when that animal is in danger and cannot fight its way free, it releases something from its body that fools predators in a way that goes far beyond a simple smokescreen. Every squid produces ink. That much is common knowledge. A threatened squid releases a dark cloud into the water, and the predator loses visual contact while the squid escapes. Simple, effective, a smokescreen made of biology. The colossal squid does something fundamentally different. The ink it releases does not simply cloud the water. It releases a dense, semi-cohesive mass that holds its shape in the water column for a meaningful length of time. The mass is dark, roughly cylindrical, and about the size of the squid's own body. In the deep ocean, at distance, in near zero visibility, it looks like a squid. Scientists examining the ink properties of colossal squid compared to other squid species found significant differences in chemical composition. The colossal squid's ink contains a higher concentration of mucus-binding proteins that increase viscosity, meaning the ink is thicker and holds together longer instead of dispersing rapidly. In standard ink cloud release, the dark material spreads and fades within seconds. The colossal squid's ink can maintain a rough body shape for far longer, giving the predator a convincing decoy to pursue while the real animal moves in a different direction. This strategy is called a pseudomorph, a false body. The colossal squid releases a pseudomorph and then jets away while the predator investigates the decoy. Researchers who documented pseudomorph behavior in related squid species observed predators making direct contact with the ink mass before recognizing it as inert matter. At the speeds and distances involved in deep ocean pursuit, even a 2-second delay caused by a convincing decoy represents a meaningful head start. For the colossal squid specifically, the pseudomorph is likely deployed in encounters with sperm whales. A whale pursuing a squid through total darkness at depth relies heavily on echolocation, the ability to emit clicks and read the returning sound waves. To track prey, an ink mass with the approximate density and shape of a squid body would return a sound signature that partially resembles the real animal. The whale's echolocation, while extremely sophisticated, can be confused by a realistic physical decoy. The ink gland that produces this material is significantly larger relative to body size in the colossal squid than in most other squid species. The body has invested in making better ink, more of it, denser, more persistent. Evolution spent resources on this particular deception, which suggests it works often enough to matter. This animal has, at various points in a typical encounter with a predator, detected the predator from 400 feet away using eyes the size of dinner plates, gone perfectly still, using buoyancy control to eliminate movement, flashed bioluminescence to confuse pursuit, struck preemptively with hooks and a bone-cutting beak, continued fighting inside a whale's stomach, and finally released a full-body decoy while escaping. Every layer of this defense system is more elaborate than the last, and the strategy that holds all of it together, the behavior that makes every one of these weapons most effective, is something researchers spent decades missing entirely before the deep-sea footage finally revealed it. The colossal squid almost never moves unless it has to. A cheetah burns enormous energy hunting. It sprints at 70 miles per hour, covers ground fast, and exhausts itself so completely that after a successful chase it sometimes cannot defend its own kill. High speed, high cost. That strategy works in open savanna, where prey can be spotted from distance and outrun. The colossal squid runs the opposite equation entirely. Deep-sea footage and acoustic tracking data compiled by researchers over the past 2 decades revealed something that initially seemed wrong. The colossal squid, despite being the largest soft-bodied predator on Earth, moves almost not at all during a typical hunting period. Scientists attaching acoustic tags to large squid in the Southern Ocean recorded movement patterns that showed the animals spending up to 90% of their time essentially motionless, hovering at a fixed depth with minimal fin activity. The colossal squid is a ghost hunter. It does not go looking for prey, it waits for prey to come to it. This strategy, called ambush predation, is actually extremely common in the animal kingdom. Crocodiles use it, anglerfish use it. Certain species of deep-sea fish hang motionless in the water column for hours, then strike in milliseconds when something swims close enough. But the colossal squid executes this strategy at a scale and in conditions that make it uniquely extreme. The squid achieves neutral buoyancy through its ammonium chloride fluid system, as covered earlier, allowing it to hang in open water without beating its fins or using jet propulsion. Once neutrally buoyant at a chosen depth, it simply stops, arms loosely spread, eyes open and scanning, bioluminescent photophores ready to fire. The animal becomes an invisible, motionless trap hanging in the dark water column, waiting for prey to drift into range. The energy savings are enormous. Locomotion is the single largest energy cost for most large marine predators. An animal that eliminates locomotion from its energy budget can survive on far fewer calories than a similarly sized active hunter. Researchers calculated that the colossal squid's metabolic rate during these motionless waiting periods is among the lowest recorded for any large marine animal. It burns almost nothing. This explains a puzzle that had confused scientists for years. How can an animal this size survive in water where prey, while present, is distributed across enormous volumes? The Southern Ocean is vast. Prey is not evenly concentrated everywhere. An active hunter burning high calories while searching for sparse prey would run an energy deficit. A completely still hunter burning almost no calories while waiting can afford to wait far longer than any active competitor. The squid's enormous eyes, the photoreceptors tuned to detect bioluminescent flashes, serve this strategy perfectly. While the body stays motionless, the eyes scan continuously. A fish moving through the darkness produces bioluminescent disturbance in the surrounding plankton. The colossal squid detects that disturbance at a distance of hundreds of feet, fixes its position, waits for the prey to close the gap, then fires the tentacles in a strike lasting less than 1 second. Still, patient, silent. And the water that makes this perfect stillness possible, the freezing current that keeps the squid invisible and carries the prey to it, is itself one of the strangest physical systems on Earth. Because that current does not just keep things cold. It has been running in a perfect circle around an entire continent for millions of years, and nothing inside it can get out. Draw a circle on a map around Antarctica. Follow it all the way around the continent without stopping. That circle, roughly 13,000 miles long, is the path of the Antarctic circumpolar current. It moves from west to east without interruption, connecting the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans into one continuous flowing ring. It carries more water than any other current on Earth. Every second, it moves over 5 billion cubic feet of water past any given point, and it acts like a wall. Warm water from tropical and temperate oceans cannot easily push through this current. The flow is too powerful, too consistent, too fast. Warm surface water that approaches the current from the north gets swept up into the circular flow rather than crossing it. Cold water from inside the current stays inside. The result is a biological barrier as effective as any physical wall. The Southern Ocean sits inside a moat of its own making. For the colossal squid, this means something profound. The species evolved inside a sealed system. For millions of years, the colossal squid's ancestors lived, reproduced, adapted, and diversified inside a body of water essentially cut off from the rest of the global ocean. No competing squid species from warmer waters could get in. No warm water predators could establish themselves permanently. The colossal squid had its entire ecosystem nearly to itself. Scientists call this kind of isolated environment an evolutionary pressure cooker. With no outside competition entering and no possibility of migration out, the species faced selection pressures that were entirely internal. The cold became more extreme over millions of years as Earth's climate shifted. The animals that handled the cold best survived. Their offspring inherited that cold tolerance. Generation by generation, the cold adaptation became more refined, more extreme, more specialized. The result is an animal so perfectly engineered for one specific environment that it cannot survive outside it. Biologists studying the Southern Ocean ecosystem describe it as one of the most stable evolutionary environments on the planet. Stable meaning the pressures stay consistent across very long time periods. Cold stays cold, the current stays circular, the nutrient upwelling continues. Animals that adapt to that stability become extremely specialized, trading adaptability for perfection in one niche. The colossal squid is the apex expression of that stability. It is perfectly matched to conditions that have remained consistent for millions of years. But those conditions are changing. The Antarctic circumpolar current is weakening slightly as ocean temperatures rise globally. Warm water is pushing further south than before. Ice shelves that feed cold meltwater into the Southern Ocean are collapsing. The cold core that the colossal squid depends on is contracting, slowly but measurably, and an animal this specialized for one narrow set of conditions has almost no ability to adjust. The evolutionary pressure cooker that created something extraordinary is beginning to heat up, and what that heat is doing to the specific zones where the colossal squid hunts is something that researchers watched happen in real time, with instruments measuring the change year by year. In 2017, a research team monitoring water temperature gradients in the Southern Ocean published findings that stopped the marine biology community cold. The zone of water sitting consistently below 35 degrees Fahrenheit, the range the colossal squid requires to function optimally, had contracted by a measurable margin compared to measurements taken 20 years earlier. The cold core of the Southern Ocean was shrinking inward toward the continent. 20 years is nothing in evolutionary time. Species adapt over thousands of generations. The colossal squid's entire biology, its hemocyanin, its enzyme chemistry, its buoyancy system, its metabolic rate, all of it was built across millions of years to match a temperature range that is now shifting faster than any biological adaptation can track. The practical consequence is straightforward. As the optimal cold zone contracts toward Antarctica, the colossal squid's hunting territory shrinks with it. The animal cannot follow its prey into warmer water without physiological consequences. Its blood becomes less efficient, its enzyme function degrades, its ability to maintain neutral buoyancy through the ammonium chloride system becomes less reliable as warmer water changes the fluid dynamics of that system. It can survive brief excursions into slightly warmer water, but sustained living outside its optimal thermal range is fatal over time. Prey species face the same pressure. Krill, the foundational food source for the entire Southern Ocean food web, are also temperature dependent. Studies tracking krill populations over the past 3 decades show a consistent shift southward as surface water warms. The squid's prey base is retreating toward the continent along with the squid itself. For now, the colossal squid may follow, but there is a physical limit to how far south both predator and prey can retreat. Antarctica itself is the southern boundary. At some point, the cold zone contracts enough that there is simply no more room to move. The animal and its food source would be compressed into progressively smaller water volumes. Researchers modeling this scenario under current warming trajectories estimated that the optimal hunting zone for the colossal squid could be less than half its current size within a century. Some models project worse outcomes depending on how quickly global ocean temperatures continue rising. The complication is that we do not know the current population size of colossal squid precisely enough to measure whether it is already declining. These animals live at depths too extreme for standard survey methods. We count them indirectly through sperm whale stomach contents, through net catches, through the occasional carcass. The data is incomplete. The population could be under pressure right now, and we might not have the tools to detect it clearly for decades. What researchers do know is that the chemical signature of the squid's flesh carries a built-in defense that has worked against most predators for millions of years. But that same chemical makes the squid nearly impossible for humans to eat, which removes one pressure while adding a different kind of mystery. Because the substance that makes this animal taste like floor cleaner is the same substance that keeps it alive in the deep. And understanding it might be the strangest part of this entire story. Pull a colossal squid from the Southern Ocean. Look at it. The flesh looks similar to other large squid species. Pale, firm, slightly translucent, standard seafood appearance. A fishing captain who had never encountered one before might assume it could be processed and sold like any other commercial squid catch. Then the smell hits. Colossal squid flesh is saturated with ammonium chloride, the same chemical compound that powers the squid's buoyancy system. In low concentrations, ammonium chloride has a sharp chemical odor. In the concentrations found throughout colossal squid tissue, the smell is overwhelming. Similar to industrial cleaning fluid, similar to the inside of a chemical storage room, the odor penetrates the meat completely and cannot be cooked away. Heating the flesh intensifies it. The taste matches the smell. Anyone who has eaten improperly prepared colossal squid, typically people who encountered carcasses and attempted to cook them without knowing what they were dealing with, described an intense, sharp, chemical flavor that made the meat inedible. Some reported nausea after consuming even small amounts. This is relevant to conservation in an unexpected way. The colossal squid has no commercial fishing industry targeting it. Despite living in waters where other species are heavily fished, despite its enormous size and the caloric density of its tissues, it has never become a target of large-scale commercial harvest. The reason is entirely chemical. There is no way to process the flesh into a product humans want to eat. Compare this to the giant squid, a related species that lacks the extreme ammonium chloride saturation. Giant squid flesh is edible. It carries a commercial value. It has been targeted by fisheries. The colossal squid's inedibility is accidental chemical armor against the one predator that has hunted most large marine animals to dangerous population levels. The ammonium chloride saturation also affects how the carcasses behave. A dead colossal squid that reaches the surface or beaches itself goes through decomposition unusually slowly compared to other large marine animals. The ammonium chloride in the tissues creates a chemical environment that inhibits certain bacterial decomposition processes. This means specimens wash ashore in relatively intact condition, which is actually how scientists obtain most of the good physical data they have about the animal. The chemical that makes it inedible also makes it a better specimen. Researchers, examining freshly landed specimens collected from beaches and net catches, use the ammonium chloride content itself as a rough guide to the animal's depth range. Animals living consistently deeper show higher concentrations, suggesting that the deeper the animal lives, the more buoyancy compensation it needs, and the more chemical it carries. It becomes a proxy measurement for how far down an individual spent most of its life. One particular specimen that beached itself in relatively intact condition gave scientists more information in a single day of examination than decades of fragment analysis had produced. That specimen changed what scientists thought they knew about the scale of the battles happening in the deep, and those battles leave marks on both animals that tell the whole story without words. A sperm whale preparing to dive does something visible from a boat. It lifts its enormous tail fluke straight up into the air, pivoting its body vertical, and drops headfirst into the water. Watching it go feels calm. What happens after the surface closes over those flukes is anything but. The whale descends at a rate that reaches several hundred feet per minute. Within 10 minutes, it is more than a mile below the surface, at depths where water pressure would crush a human body instantly. The whale's ribcage actually compresses under this pressure, its lungs collapsing to a fraction of their surface volume. The sperm whale's body handles this because its tissues are adapted to pressure in ways that mammal physiology usually is not. But the dive is still an extreme physical event. The whale is pushing its body to a biological limit every single time. It goes this deep because that is where the colossal squid waits. Sperm whales navigate in total darkness, using echolocation clicks so powerful they are among the loudest sounds produced by any animal alive. Those clicks travel through water, bounce off objects, and return as echoes that the whale processes into a detailed three-dimensional picture of its surroundings. At 1 mile deep, in complete darkness, a sperm whale essentially sees with sound. When the click pattern returns, an echo shaped like a large squid, the whale accelerates toward it. What happens next is documented only in the aftermath. The whale surfaces sometime later, after a dive that can last 90 minutes. Its skin carries fresh puncture marks, hook scars in circular clusters, sometimes long parallel cuts across the jaw or flanks from tentacle contact. The whale surfaces breathing hard, carrying evidence of a battle it fought in a place no human instrument has ever directly observed. Scientists studying the scar patterns across dozens of sperm whale populations developed a system for aging the wounds. Fresh scars, still raised and pink, indicate recent encounters. Old scars, flat and pale against the dark skin, represent battles from years or decades earlier. Nearly every mature sperm whale that feeds in southern ocean waters carries both. The fresh ones from last season, the old ones from years of hunting before that. What the scar maps reveal is a lifetime of combat. A single whale's skin surface, photographed in detail, tells the history of hundreds of encounters with colossal squid across decades. Researchers use these photo identification records to track individual whales over years, and the accumulating scars function as a timeline of each animal's hunting career. One whale documented over a 20-year study period acquired over 300 distinct hook scar clusters, 300 separate battles, each one happening in total darkness, at crushing pressure, against an animal armed with rotating hooks and a beak that cuts bone. The whale keeps going back. The caloric reward from a large, colossal squid, given the animal's enormous size, justifies the cost and the risk. For the whale, the colossal squid is worth fighting. For the squid, the whale's echolocation is a sound it can detect through vibration before the whale arrives, and the photoreceptors in those enormous eyes pick up the bioluminescent disturbance the whale creates as it moves through the plankton layer. But some colossal squid are too large for even a sperm whale to subdue cleanly. And the evidence for exactly how large those individuals might be came not from a living animal, but from a measurement taken from the outside of a whale's skin. A sucker scar is not a hook scar. Hook scars are small, round, punched-in marks from the rotating claws on the squid's arms. Sucker scars are different. They come from the suckers found at the base of the squid's tentacles, toothed rings that press hard against the whale's skin when the tentacle wraps around the body. These toothed rings leave distinctive circular impressions, and crucially, their diameter scales directly with the size of the animal that made them. This gave researchers a measuring tool they had not anticipated. A team of biologists studying sperm whale skin collected from whaling operations in the 1950s through 1980s, before whaling was widely banned, measured sucker scar diameters across thousands of skin samples. They compared these measurements against what was known about sucker ring size, relative to total body length in colossal squid specimens already recovered. The math worked in reverse. Measure the scar, calculate the sucker ring that made it, calculate the arm size that carried that ring, calculate the total body length of the squid. Most sucker scar diameters matched squid in the 30 to 40 foot range, consistent with what scientists already knew. But some scars were significantly larger. In a subset of samples, the sucker ring diameters implied squid with body lengths that exceeded any specimen ever recovered. The largest implied animals in the range of 60 feet, the length of a school bus. When these findings were published, they generated immediate debate. Critics pointed out that sucker scar measurements carry uncertainty. Scars distort as wounds heal. Whale skin stretches and contracts. The relationship between scar size and animal size involves estimation rather than direct measurement. The 60-foot figure was a calculation, not a confirmed specimen. Proponents responded that even with generous error margins built into the calculation, the largest scars implied animals well above 45 feet, significantly larger than anything ever caught. The debate over the exact upper limit of colossal squid size has continued for decades. What makes this debate scientifically productive is that it pushed researchers toward better methods. Teams began using photogrammetry, precise photographic measurement techniques, to document whale scars with higher accuracy. Underwater imaging technology improved to the point where researchers could photograph whales at close range and calculate scar dimensions without touching the animal. Each generation of better tools produced more refined estimates. The current scientific picture, based on the most recent analyses, places the likely maximum size of living colossal squid between 45 and 50 feet for the largest individuals, with genuine uncertainty extending higher. An animal 45 feet long and proportionally built would weigh somewhere between half a ton and a full ton, significantly heavier than any specimen weighed directly. The largest colossal squid alive right now is almost certainly an animal no human has ever seen intact. It lives at depth, avoids the surface, rarely interacts with anything that could bring it up. It hunts in darkness. It leaves marks on whales. It exists as a calculation derived from an impression on skin, and the nervous system controlling that animal, the brain running those enormous eyes and 10 independent limbs in real time, is an engineering achievement that biology executed without bones, without a skull, and without anything resembling what we think a complex brain requires to work. Your brain controls your arms. Simple enough, you decide to pick something up, the signal travels down your spine and out through nerves, and your arm moves. Everything comes from the top. Central control. All decisions flow from one headquarters. The colossal squid runs a completely different command structure. The squid's nervous system is distributed. The central brain handles high-level decisions, choosing a target, initiating an attack, processing the information from the eyes. But each arm carries its own cluster of nerve cells, called a ganglion, that handles local movement independently. The arm does not wait for central commands to decide how to grip, how to adjust pressure, how to orient its hooks against struggling prey. It processes that locally, in real time, without sending signals all the way back to the central brain and waiting for a response. This matters enormously in practice. When all 10 limbs are simultaneously engaged with prey, the amount of sensory information flowing from touch receptors, pressure sensors, and hook engagement feedback across every arm would overwhelm a centralized system. A brain trying to process all of that simultaneously and issue precise movement commands to every hook on every arm would lag. The grip would be slower and less responsive. The distributed system eliminates the lag entirely. Each arm handles its own grip mechanics. The central brain handles strategy. The result is an animal that can simultaneously grapple with a large, struggling prey item using 10 independent limbs, each one adjusting grip pressure, hook angle, and arm positioning without waiting for instructions from headquarters. Neuroscientists who study cephalopod nervous systems describe this architecture as surprisingly convergent. With certain robotics designs, humans have developed for handling complex, unpredictable objects. The distributed control approach, where local processors handle real-time fine motor tasks, while a central processor handles higher-level coordination, appears in some of the most advanced robotic arms currently in development. The squid evolved this design hundreds of millions of years ago. The total number of neurons in a colossal squid is estimated at several hundred million. That is orders of magnitude fewer than a human brain. But the architecture of those neurons, the way they are distributed and connected, allows for behaviors of remarkable complexity. Each arm, operating semi-independently, is capable of learning through its own local sensory experience without involving the central brain. Research on octopus arms demonstrated that arm ganglia can even continue responding to touch stimulation for a short period after being separated from the body, a demonstration of just how genuinely independent the local processing is. For hunting in total darkness, at 1 mile depth, against prey that struggles violently and unpredictably, this distributed processing system provides a decisive advantage. The grip adjusts faster than the prey can change its behavior. Every hook, every arm, responds to what it is feeling right now, in real time. The whole system runs inside a body that has no internal skeleton, no rigid structure of any kind to anchor those limbs against. And yet it survives encounters that would destroy most armored animals. The reason it can survive without armor comes down to something even stranger than distributed nerves. Pick up a colossal squid hatchling. It fits easily in your palm. Translucent body, arms barely visible, eyes already disproportionately large for the tiny frame, because the eyes develop first and fastest. Hold it there and try to connect it visually to the 30-foot apex predator it will eventually become. The connection is almost impossible to make. The colossal squid's developmental trajectory is one of the most dramatic size transformations in the animal kingdom. After hatching from eggs released in open water somewhere in the Southern Ocean, juvenile colossal squid enter what researchers call the paralarvae stage. These tiny animals drift near the surface, eating microscopic prey and growing slowly. They do not look like squid in any meaningful sense to an untrained eye. They look like tiny glassy blobs with oversized eyes and minimal structure. Fishermen who have accidentally caught them in surface nets often did not recognize what they were holding. The paralarvae stage lasts weeks to months. During this time, the juveniles are essentially plankton, drifting with currents, completely exposed to predators they cannot fight or escape from. Mortality at this stage is extreme. Scientists estimate that out of the millions of eggs a female releases in a single reproductive event, only a tiny fraction survive past the first few months. Those that survive begin sinking gradually as they grow heavier, moving toward deeper water. As they descend, their body architecture changes. The arms lengthen, the hooks develop, the beak hardens. The eyes, already large relative to body size, continue growing as the body itself expands to meet them. The transition from surface drifter to deep water predator takes years and happens in stages rather than all at once. cold water drives the slow development. The same temperature that ultimately produces enormous adult size works against rapid juvenile growth. Each degree of cold slows metabolic processes, including the cellular division that builds new tissue. A colossal squid juvenile growing in Antarctic water adds mass far more slowly than a tropical squid species of comparable starting size. But what it builds durably. The tissues accumulate slowly and last long. Scientists studying growth rings inside the squid's statoliths, small calcium structures in the inner ear equivalent organ that record growth in daily layers similar to tree rings, estimate that the colossal squid reaches its full adult size somewhere between 3 and 5 years of age. For an animal reaching over 1,000 pounds, that growth rate is slow by the standards of large ocean predators. A blue shark reaches similar mass faster. A mako shark grows faster still, but the colossal squid's growth continues past the point where most marine animals stop. The cold keeps the cells active, keeps the tissue building, well into what would be considered adulthood in faster-growing species. The animal is still increasing in mass during the final year or two before reproduction. The slow build toward an extreme size happens inside a body with no armor and no skeleton. And how that body survives without either is something that requires rethinking what protection actually means in the deep ocean. The surface of the Southern Ocean has warmed by roughly 0.5 degree Fahrenheit over the past 50 years. That sounds small. A 0.5 degree in an ocean covering millions of square miles sounds like almost nothing. But ocean temperature operates differently from air temperature. Water holds heat far better than air does. A 0.5 degree rise in ocean temperature represents an enormous amount of additional thermal energy distributed through billions of cubic feet of water. The biological effects are not minor, they are systemic. For the colossal squid, temperature tolerance is not a wide range. The animal's entire body chemistry is optimized for a narrow band of cold. Above a certain threshold, the hemocyanin in its blood begins losing efficiency. The enzyme systems that power its muscles start slowing below peak performance. The buoyancy fluid dynamics change. The animal's body begins working harder to do the same things it does effortlessly in colder water. The response the colossal squid has available is depth. Colder water exists deeper. As surface and mid-depth waters warm, the animal retreats downward to stay within its optimal temperature range. This is already being detected through indirect means. Researchers analyzing the depth at which colossal squid remains appear in net catches have noted a gradual shift toward deeper recovery depths over the past 30 years. The problem is that depth has limits of its own. Equipment capable of reaching the depths where the colossal squid currently lives, around 3,000 to 5,000 feet, is expensive, technically complex, and available in very limited numbers worldwide. Camera systems and remotely operated vehicles designed for these depths require years of engineering and millions of dollars to build. There are only a handful of deep diving research vessels capable of supporting them. As the squid moves deeper, even these tools begin to lose reach. Below 6,000 feet, the number of research platforms capable of observation drops sharply. Below 10,000 feet, scientists are essentially working blind. The squid's response to warming, retreating into deeper cold zones, takes it progressively further from the instruments humans use to study it. There is a cruel irony in this. The colossal squid is retreating from a threat created by human activity into water too deep for humans to follow with current technology. The more it retreats, the less we can see it. The less we can see it, the less we know whether its population is stable, declining, or collapsing. By the time evidence of a population crisis became detectable through indirect measurements, the window for any meaningful response might already be gone. Researchers advocating for Southern Ocean monitoring programs have pushed for expanded deep-water observation networks, autonomous underwater vehicles capable of extended missions below 3 miles, and satellite tagging programs that could track tagged individuals across depth changes over months. The funding for these programs moves slowly compared to the rate at which the ocean is warming. The animal that has survived unchanged for millions of years, that has outlasted ice ages and continental drift, now faces a threat operating on a timescale that outpaces biology. And yet, even without armor, even without bones, even without a protective shell of any kind, this animal has taken on battles that armored creatures could not survive. Understanding how it does that requires understanding what a body made entirely of soft tissue is actually capable of enduring. Press your hand against your forearm. Feel the bone underneath. That rigid structure is what keeps your arm from collapsing under pressure, what gives your muscles something to pull against when you move, what protects the blood vessels and nerves running through your limb. Vertebrates, which includes fish, birds, reptiles, and mammals, all depend on some version of that rigid internal framework. Take the skeleton away, and the body loses its shape, its leverage, and most of its structural integrity. The colossal squid has no skeleton, 0 bones from beak to tail tip, with the single exception of the hard beak itself and the tiny statolith structures used for balance. Everything else is soft tissue. The entire 30-foot body, including the arms, the mantle, the fins, and the internal organs, is held together by muscle and connective tissue alone. This sounds like a fatal weakness. A body with no rigid support should be easy to damage. A predator that bites into it should encounter nothing that resists, nothing that deflects the attack. A sperm whale's jaws, which can exert crushing force far beyond what most materials can handle, should be able to destroy a soft-bodied animal in a single bite. And yet, the colossal squid survives encounters with sperm whales repeatedly throughout its life. The sucker scars and hook marks found on whale skin prove that many individual squid escape engagements that should have been fatal. The answer lies in what soft tissue can do that rigid structures cannot. Soft tissue deforms under pressure rather than breaking. When a sperm whale's jaws close on a section of colossal squid arm, the tissue compresses and displaces rather than snapping. The whale must apply sustained, enormous force to actually sever the tissue, and during that sustained force application, the rest of the squid's arms are free to engage the whale with hooks and create enough resistance and pain to potentially force the whale to release. A single missed bite that fails to sever entirely gives the squid a window to fight back. Soft bodies are also harder to grip than rigid ones. A whale's jaws can lock onto a fish's skeleton and hold it securely. The same jaws pressing on soft squid tissue get purchase on a material that actively gives way, making a firm grip more difficult to establish and hold. The squid's tissue deforms around the pressure point rather than presenting a solid surface to grip against. The squid's mantle, the large cylindrical main body tube, is also filled with water. A pressurized structure full of fluid is significantly more resistant to crushing than it appears. Hydraulic resistance, the same principle that makes a water balloon much harder to flatten than an empty balloon, provides the mantle with structural integrity despite having no rigid framework. None of this makes the colossal squid invulnerable. Sperm whales eat enormous numbers of them. The evidence is overwhelming, but the soft body provides survivability advantages in glancing encounters, partial bites, and short engagements that rigid body plans cannot match. The body has one more specialized tool that helps it hunt in the dark. A tool so precisely built, it functions like a device designed in a laboratory. Military night vision equipment works by amplifying whatever tiny amount of available light exists in a dark environment. Even in conditions a human eye registers as complete darkness, a night vision scope can find and amplify residual photons, the stray light particles reflecting off objects in the scene. The result is a grainy but usable image where a human eye sees absolutely nothing. The colossal squid carries a biological equivalent, built from protein rather than electronics, that outperforms most night vision technology on a specific task. The squid's retina, the light-sensitive layer at the back of each eye, contains photoreceptor cells called rhabdomeres. Scientists studying the structure of these cells in colossal squid specimens found that they are specifically optimized to absorb light in a narrow wavelength range, corresponding to blue-green bioluminescence. Most deep-sea organisms produce light in exactly this color range. Blue-green light travels furthest through water before being absorbed. Evolution in deep ocean environments pushes bioluminescence toward this color because it works best underwater. And predators in these environments have evolved eyes sensitive to exactly that frequency. The colossal squid's photoreceptors are not general-purpose light detectors. They are tuned instruments, calibrated for the specific color of light produced by the creatures they hunt and the predators they avoid. But the more remarkable adaptation is the density and size of those photoreceptors. In human eyes, and in most animal eyes, photoreceptor cells are microscopic and packed tightly into the retina at high density. More cells per square area means higher resolution, the ability to see fine detail. The colossal squid's retina takes a different approach. The individual photoreceptors are large, giving each one a bigger light-collecting surface. The trade-off is lower resolution, but dramatically higher light sensitivity. Each individual cell catches more photons per unit of time than a smaller cell would. In practical terms, this means the squid's eye sacrifices sharp detail in exchange for the ability to detect extremely faint light at extreme distances. Researchers calculated that the squid's eye can register a bioluminescent flash containing fewer photons than almost any other eye in the known animal kingdom can detect. The eye is built to find light that is barely there. When a sperm whale moves through the deep water column, it disturbs bioluminescent plankton in its wake. The wake glows faintly. The colossal squid's tuned, oversized photoreceptors can detect that faint wake glow from hundreds of feet away, giving the squid a directional fix on the approaching whale long before the whale's own echolocation has identified the squid's location. In the predator-prey dynamic between whale and squid, the squid gets an advanced warning system built from light. This same sensitivity that detects the whale also detects prey fish moving through plankton clouds, other squid producing communication flashes, and any light-producing organism entering the squid's detection radius. The eye is a radar dish built for a specific signal, and the body it is mounted on moves through water in ways that amplify every advantage that eye provides. The mantle is the large tube-shaped section of the colossal squid's body, the part that makes up the bulk of its visible mass when you see images of a recovered specimen. Inside the mantle are the squid's organs, its reproductive system, its digestive tract, its ink gland, and a specialized chamber that defines how this animal moves through water. That chamber is a water-filled cavity with a muscular opening called a siphon. When the mantle muscles contract, they squeeze the cavity from all sides simultaneously. The force of that contraction drives water out through the siphon at high velocity. The animal shoots in the opposite direction of the expelled water. This is biological jet propulsion, the same physical principle used by rockets and jet engines. Force equals mass times acceleration. Push water one way fast enough and the body goes the other way fast. For the colossal squid, this jet system delivers short bursts of speed that exceed the swimming speed of most fish in its environment. During a strike on prey, the squid uses a combination of tentacle extension and mantle jet to close the last several feet of distance in a fraction of a second. The prey has essentially no reaction time between when the squid commits to the strike and when the hooks engage. The mantle jet also serves as an emergency escape system. When threatened, the squid can fire the jet at full power, launching itself backward at speeds researchers estimate at up to 25 miles per hour in short bursts. 25 miles per hour through dense water is an extraordinary velocity. Most human swimmers peak at around 5 miles per hour. Olympic sprint swimmers reach about 6. The colossal squid moves 5 times faster than the fastest human swimmer when it needs to. This speed cannot be sustained. The mantle chamber empties with each contraction and must refill with water before firing again. The squid can fire multiple bursts in rapid sequence, but each burst is separated by a brief reloading period. Extended high-speed travel is not possible with this system. What the jet provides is explosive acceleration in short windows, perfect for a predator that spends most of its time motionless and then needs sudden, overwhelming speed for a fraction of a second. Scientists studying the hydrodynamics of the mantle contraction found that the siphon opening can be oriented in multiple directions, giving the squid the ability to fire in various directions rather than only straight backward. By aiming the siphon, the squid can make rapid lateral movements, sudden dives, or upward accelerations without turning its entire body first. The maneuvering capability from a fully functioning mantle jet is substantial for an animal of this size. The jet system is also connected to breathing. Water drawn into the mantle cavity passes over the squid's gills before being expelled. The mantle contraction that moves the animal is the same mechanical process that ventilates its respiratory system. Movement and breathing are the same action. An animal this perfectly engineered, this precisely built for its environment, raises an inevitable question about gender, because the two sexes of this species are so different in size that scientists initially wondered if they were looking at different animals altogether. When researchers first began examining multiple colossal squid specimens, they noticed something puzzling. The animals varied enormously in size, but the variation did not distribute evenly. The very largest specimens, the animals approaching and exceeding 30 feet and 1,100 pounds, were consistently female. The males, while still enormous by any normal standard, topped out at sizes significantly smaller than the largest females. This size gap between male and female animals is called sexual size difference, and it is extreme in the colossal squid. Female colossal squid can be roughly twice the mass of males of the same age. The largest confirmed male specimens recovered to date measure around 20 feet and several hundred pounds. The largest confirmed females are more than half again that size. Understanding why requires understanding what each sex needs its body to do. Female colossal squid carry the entire reproductive burden of the species. As described earlier, a female approaching spawning age must accommodate reproductive organs that can account for nearly a fifth of total body mass. The eggs themselves, produced in millions, require enormous physical space and the metabolic output of a very large body to synthesize. A larger female body produces more eggs. A much larger body produces dramatically more eggs. The evolutionary pressure on females to be big is intense because size translates directly into reproductive output. Males have no equivalent pressure driving extreme size. Their reproductive role requires delivering genetic material once and dying. A male that reaches a body size sufficient to locate females, compete for mating opportunities, and complete reproduction has fulfilled its biological function. There is no reproductive advantage to being dramatically larger than that threshold size. There is a darker aspect to this size difference that marine biologists who study reproductive behavior in cephalopods have discussed. The colossal squid's mating process is documented only fragmentarily. Scientists have examined tissue damage patterns on recovered males and females, and some researchers have proposed that very large females may occasionally cannibalize smaller males during or after mating. Cannibalism during mating is documented in other squid species, and in some spider species where females are dramatically larger than males. The size gap in the colossal squid is large enough that a male mating with a female nearly twice his mass would face a genuine physical risk if the female behaved aggressively. This remains a proposed interpretation rather than a directly observed event. The depths at which mating occurs make direct observation essentially impossible with current technology, but the size differential is real. The precedent in related species is documented, and the pattern fits the same brutal logic that governs every other aspect of this animal's existence. The body does exactly what it needs to do to carry the species forward, and the cost of that necessity falls entirely on the individual. What both sexes share is an ecological role so central to the Southern Ocean food web that removing the species would restructure the entire ecosystem above it. Draw the Southern Ocean food web on paper. Start at the bottom. Microscopic phytoplankton fed by nutrient upwelling, krill feeding on phytoplankton, small fish and deep-sea creatures feeding on krill, Colossal squid feeding on those deeper creatures. Sperm whales feeding on colossal squid. Remove the colossal squid from that diagram. Watch what happens to the connections above and below it. The colossal squid occupies what ecologists call a keystone position, a species whose role in the food web is disproportionately large relative to its population size. It acts as a calorie bridge, concentrating the energy from hundreds of thousands of smaller prey animals into a single high-density food source, accessible to surface predators. A sperm whale cannot practically eat krill. The caloric density is too low and the prey too small for an animal needing thousands of calories per day. The whale needs prey that has already done the work of accumulating calories from smaller sources. The colossal squid does exactly that job. The scale of this calorie transfer is enormous. Scientists estimating the total colossal squid biomass consumed by sperm whales annually in southern ocean waters arrived at numbers suggesting that sperm whales alone remove millions of tons of squid from the ecosystem each year. That figure represents a continuous extraction of calories from deep water sources and their delivery to the surface world in the form of whale tissue and, eventually, whale waste and whale carcasses. Whale waste, rich in nutrients, rises to the surface and fertilizes phytoplankton growth, the same phytoplankton that feeds the krill that the squid eats. The loop closes back on itself. The colossal squid sits at the center of a calorie cycle that runs continuously and keeps the entire Southern Ocean productive. Other animals also depend on the squid as prey, though less dramatically than sperm whales. Antarctic toothfish hunt juvenile colossal squid. Some seabird species consume squid that surface or drift near the water surface. Even some seal species have been documented eating smaller colossal squid. The breadth of predators touching the colossal squid at various life stages reinforces how central it is to the food web rather than being a specialist connection between just two species. Removing this species, through warming, through fishing pressure on its prey base, or through any other disruption, would not simply eliminate one entry on the food chain. It would cut the calorie bridge between the deep ocean and the surface world. The effects would cascade upward through every species that depends on sperm whales, and downward through every species whose population is regulated by squid predation. Marine ecologists studying food web resilience consistently rank the colossal squid among the highest priority species for Southern Ocean conservation monitoring, precisely because its ecological leverage is so large. The system is not robust to losing it, and the single most informative day in the history of colossal squid science came from one animal that the ocean delivered directly to human hands. April 2003, a beach on the South Island of New Zealand. A local resident out for an early morning walk came across something in the sand that stopped her completely. A shape too large to be a seal, too pale to be a whale. Arms spread across the wet sand, partially buried by wave action. Eyes open, body intact enough to still be recognizably an animal. A colossal squid, female. Approximately 14 feet of recoverable body, with additional tissue damage, suggesting original length significantly greater. Mass estimated at around 300 pounds, though partial decomposition made exact measurement uncertain. The largest specimen to reach shore in the southern hemisphere in modern recorded history at that time. The museum team that arrived within hours understood immediately what they had. Full-body specimens of this quality almost never become available. The ocean disassembles carcasses within days. Scavengers, currents, decomposition, and depth mean that most colossal squid die and dissolve without leaving anything a scientist can examine in detail. This animal had arrived intact enough for a comprehensive examination. What the team learned in the following days rewrote several entries in the scientific record. Internal organ measurements confirmed reproductive organ proportions that had previously been estimated only from incomplete tissue samples. The ovaries were partially developed, suggesting the animal was approaching but had not yet reached spawning condition. This gave researchers the first clear look at the physical changes a female body undergoes during the pre-reproductive phase. The beak, recovered intact, measured larger than any beak in the museum's existing collection by a significant margin. Researchers used its dimensions to recalibrate the size estimation formulas used to interpret beaks found in whale stomachs, which immediately revised upward the estimated sizes of several previously analyzed whale stomach specimens. The skin surface carried scar tissue consistent with sperm whale toothrake marks, confirming that this animal had survived at least one whale encounter in its lifetime. The scars had healed and were old, meaning the encounter happened months or years before the animal's death. The eyes, though somewhat degraded from time on the beach, provided tissue samples that enabled the photoreceptor research that later established the light sensitivity described in an earlier chapter. The physical size of the lens allowed measurement of its precise optical properties. Tissue samples from across the body, muscle, skin, organ material, and ink gland fluid went to research teams in multiple countries. Results from those samples fed into studies covering hemocyanin structure, ammonium chloride distribution, enzyme cold adaptation, bioluminescent cell chemistry, and reproductive tissue development simultaneously. One animal, one morning, one walk on a New Zealand beach generated a decade of scientific papers. Specimens like this are the only windows scientists have into the biology of an animal that still, even now, remains almost entirely beyond direct observation. Every chapter of knowledge about this creature has been assembled from fragments, from scars, from stomach contents, from beachings, from brief camera glimpses. And yet every fragment reveals something that forces a rethinking of what life in the deep ocean is capable of producing. Because the colossal squid is not the exception to what lives in extreme cold and extreme depth. It is the preview. The deepest point in the Southern Ocean sits at roughly 24,000 feet below the surface. The pressure at that depth is over 700 times what you feel standing on dry land. The temperature is barely above freezing. No sunlight has ever touched that water. It exists in a state of permanent, crushing, absolute darkness, and things live there. The deep ocean covers more than 60% of Earth's surface. The average depth of the global ocean is over 12,000 feet. The majority of our planet, by volume, consists of cold, pressurized, dark water that humanity has explored less thoroughly than the surface of the moon. Scientists estimate that over 80% of species living in the deep ocean remain undiscovered and unnamed. The colossal squid, with 30 feet of body and eyes the size of dinner plates and blue copper-based blood and rotating hooks, and a beak that cuts bone and a brain wrapped around its throat, is a species we know about. A species confirmed. A species documented with recovered specimens, published research papers, and decades of study. And by the standards of what might exist in the unexplored deep, the colossal squid might be ordinary. Researchers who study deep sea biology argue consistently that the extreme conditions of the deep ocean, cold, pressure, darkness, isolation, drive evolutionary outcomes as extreme as the conditions themselves. The same forces that produced polar gigantism in the colossal squid apply to every species living at depth. The oxygen enrichment, the cold-driven growth extension, the millions of years of evolutionary isolation, all apply everywhere in the cold, deep ocean. In the 1990s, a remotely operated vehicle exploring the waters between Japan and the Philippines photographed an unidentified squid, estimated at over 20 feet in length, that matched no known species. Scientists studying the footage published a description of what they saw but could not recover a specimen. The animal remains formally unidentified and may represent a species entirely unknown to science. Deep-sea trawling operations occasionally pull up specimens of fish, crustaceans, and invertebrates that do not match any catalogued species. Published reports of anomalous specimens appear in scientific literature regularly. Each one represents a known unknown, something confirmed to exist, but not yet described or named. The colossal squid teaches a specific lesson about this. For most of human history, this animal existed only as mythology. Sailors described it. Cultures built legends around it. Scientists dismissed those legends as exaggeration. Then the fragments started turning up in whale stomachs, Then the beachings provided bodies. Then the camera footage confirmed behavior. Every step from myth to documented reality required physical evidence, and the physical evidence only became available when the right piece of ocean delivered it to the right people at the right moment. The Southern Ocean is still delivering. Deep water research expeditions operating in Antarctic waters in the past decade have repeatedly encountered biological material that does not match existing species descriptions. Samples from those expeditions sit in laboratory freezers waiting for analysis. Some of those samples may represent entirely new species. Some may represent animals as extreme as the colossal squid in their own ways. The planet has not finished introducing itself. The deep, cold water that made one living nightmare has had the same millions of years to make others. Every dive goes deeper. Every camera shows something stranger. The ocean floor is still mostly darkness, and the darkness is full